to my mind, attribute any deaths with a degree of certainty to hostile intent. But, and this is the important point, neither can we rule it out. And again, just I think because it's an important point about the military mindset, if you're facing a situation where you're dealing with an unknown, I guess you could have two different approaches. You could, on the one hand, say, well, let's hope that everything's going to be fine and do nothing. Or we can say, well, actually, let's assume that it may not be, and let's take one or two sensible precautions. Now, one can see this thinking throughout history. Again, particularly in thinking of military situations. And to me, again, it seems prudent to say in relation to the UFO phenomenon, look, great, we all hope that this turns out to be benign. We all hope that if the day comes when humankind as a species makes open, undeniable contact, of course we hope that that's going to be done with a hand of friendship extended. But that is a hope. It's an assumption. And history suggests, particularly, I'm afraid, our own human history, where a more technologically advanced civilization encounters a less technologically advanced civilization, our own history suggests that inevitably the less technologically advanced civilization comes off worse. Now, of course, we hope that doesn't happen, but you see my point. It would be nice to think everything in the garden is rosy, but it would be prudent to assume it might not be.
In terms of being prudent, what precautions do you suggest?
Well, it's very difficult to say. But clearly, I mean, nobody in their right mind would suggest that our first action on encountering an extraterrestrial civilization would be to attack. But if we are attacked, again, we're back to this point about the whole ethos of the Ministry of Defence.
Do you not feel that there are no precautions that you can take? There are no precautions.
Well, I think clearly we have a range of sophisticated weapons, nuclear weapons, directed energy weapons, some weapons which we probably won't hear about for the next 10 or 15 years. The technological curve always runs at least 10 or 15 years ahead of anything that's publicly declared. Now, I'm not sitting here advocating War of the Worlds here, but look, all I'm saying is if we were attacked, we would respond in kind. Of course we would.
Well, describe the moment that you started to suspect that this unidentified phenomenon was something real and tangible, and not just something, of the movies.
Well, I think it was when I read the file on the Rendlesham Forest incident, Britain's best-known case. The twin bases of Bentwaters and Woodbridge. These were, at the time, American bases, United States Air Force bases in the county of Suffolk in England. And over a series of nights in December 1980, military personnel, predominantly security police and law enforcement personnel at those bases, encountered UFOs. On the first night, something landed. A small triangular craft landed in a clearing. One of the witnesses, Jim Penniston, got close enough to touch the side of it, to see and actually sketch strange symbols on its hull that he likened to Egyptian hieroglyphs. This object was heavy enough to leave indentations in the ground where it had come down on 3 legs. The following day, they took a Geiger counter out to... the thing took off and flew away at huge speed, incredibly bright light. They took a Geiger counter to the landing site, they found that the radiation levels peaked in those 3 holes where this thing had come down, and the Ministry of Defence, the government scientists in our defence intelligence staff, said that the levels of radiation taken seemed significantly higher than the background levels. Now, there's, funnily enough, flipping back to the issue about a potential threat and hostile intent, some of those witnesses, and we're coming up to 30 years after this case, some of these witnesses are claiming that they have health issues that they believe may be attributable to this object. And there's quite a lot of anger among...
Radiation poisoning?
Possibly. They feel that they were very badly treated by their own chain of command after this, in terms of aggressive debriefing, being told you mustn't talk about this. There are various allegations. We're coming up, of course, to the 30th anniversary of this. Some of the people who were in the United States Air Force and caught up in this incident are planning a reunion. They are also planning to write to Congress about this, to raise the healthcare issues. So that's one part of the issue. But the interesting thing about the Rendlesham Forest case was it wasn't just that one night. On a subsequent night, the UFO returned, and on this occasion, the witnesses included Lieutenant Colonel Charles Holt, the deputy base commander. He and a team of men went out into the forest. The forest lies between these two bases, by the way. And they saw the UFO directly overhead, at one point firing light beams down at their position, at another time firing light beams down at a particular part of the military base. Colonel Holt is probably one of the most senior, if not the most senior, military officers to have reported a personal UFO sighting whilst on duty. So very, very interesting case in terms of, firstly, the number of witnesses, secondly, the credibility of the witnesses, almost all military, including the deputy base commander, and thirdly, of course, the physical evidence in terms of the indentations in the ground and critically, of course, the radiation levels that were taken.
Was there any time in your career that you were shut down and told not to debrief or not to discuss this with anyone?
There were one or two occasions where my head of division would say something to the effect of probably time to drop this one now. But I don't think that was quite as... Drop the investigation, I mean.
Yeah, specific example.
There was one case from 1993 where we had multiple sightings over the United Kingdom, including the direct overflight of 2 Air Force bases, Cosford and Shawbury. We had a military witness describe an immense triangular-shaped craft at very low level. His description to me was midway in size between a C-130 Hercules transport aircraft and a Boeing 747. So we're talking several hundred feet in diameter, probably no more than 200 feet above the ground. Low frequency humming sound coming from this craft, very unpleasant, he said, one of those sounds that you feel as well as hear. He saw it fire a narrow beam of light down at the ground. Again, this beam of light was tracking backwards and forwards. And he said suddenly, from moving very, very slowly, and this is a description that I'd come across many, many times, and it's well documented in the literature. From a very slow speed, this thing accelerated away to the horizon in seconds. And I said to him, well, try and give me a speed. And he said, well, imagine one of the Air Force fast jets, he said, orders of magnitude above